Are you looking to install a wood stove in your home? Maybe you've got a wood stove and you're looking for an upgrade to find something better. Let's see if I can give you a hand with that. I'm Terry from Everything Homestead. I'm in my home with my Vogelzang wood stove behind me here. This particular stove, I'll show you, is the Vogelzang. There's the model number. That's what I have, and it's a really good stove. It's really efficient, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. First, let's start off with some considerations that you need to take into account when you're using a wood stove in your house. If you don't have a wood stove in your house and you're going to install one, you need to carefully figure out exactly what part of your house you're going to install that wood stove. Typically, you like to keep it in the center of your home as best you can so the heat can radiate out from there and heat your home as evenly as possible. With my situation, I have a two-story house with a basement under it, and my main focus, other than heating my house, was to keep my home heated on all three levels the easiest way I possibly could. I could install it in the center of the main floor of the home, but then my basement would be pretty cold in the wintertime. And I've got a lot of water pipes in the basement. I'd like to keep them from freezing. So I decided to put my wood stove in the basement. If I were to put it in the middle of the home, that means I'd have to put the chimney vent up through the center of my home, which means I'll go through the ceiling of the basement, floor of the main level, go through the next ceiling, go through the next ceiling, into the attic, through the roof. That's a lot of holes to cut through my house, and you have to insulate with the correct piping so you don't cause a fire hazard at each level. And so I thought the best route for me was to run the chimney from out the stove, and I'll show you in a minute, goes straight out the side of the house at the basement level, and the chimney goes up the exterior of my home up to a height that goes just above the roof line. One of the considerations of the type of stove that I was looking for is something I could cook on too. As you can see, nice cooking area here. I've used it a number of times, works great. So when you go to place the stove in whatever location you pick, you got to take in consideration any combustible materials around it. There's recommendations from each stove manufacturer. They usually have it in the literature that they have with the stove, or you can go online to find it too. The backstops or the firewall that I built here makes it the way I made it so you can put the stove closer to the wall without risk of burning your house down. It gives me more open floor space too. Now, the floor itself also has to have some fire resistant material. I have tile on the floor underneath here, and you have to follow the instructions as to how far away from the stove that should go. Because when you open up the door, there's burning embers that could fall out, and you don't want to start a fire from that either. One other consideration I forgot to tell you about is that with the heat coming off this stove in the wintertime, I have a stairway not too many feet away from me here that goes up to the next level, and then the stairway that goes up to the next level is right around the corner from that. So the nice part about where this stove is located, it's up against the wall, but the heat does go up the steps to the next level, then up the next steps to the next level. Heats the whole house pretty well. This particular stove is rated for, if memory serves, about 2,400 square feet of heating it provides. And I have more square footage than that, but because I have my house built vertically, it covers it just fine. The only time it gets a little cold is if it's 20, 30 below zero outside. Then I've got an LP gas furnace, a forced air furnace, that I use in conjunction with this, that between the two works just fine. Just set the LP furnace on a thermostat. When it gets to a certain temperature, that kicks on. The LP furnace comes in handy too when I'm away, because this here will keep the wood burning for maybe 10 hours at a time. But if I'm gone longer than that, nice peace of mind knowing I've got my LP furnace on hand to cover when this is done heating. I don't have to worry about it. Now, when it comes to this stove, there's a couple of features on here I'd show you. It's kind of dirty right now, but there's some bricks lining the inside and on the bottom. And underneath this metal top, there's a layer of insulation. So when you build the fire, this particular model holds the heat really well. So if you build a fire, the fire will burn for 6-7 hours. Even if the fire starts to go out, it's insulated so well with those bricks, it'll still emit heat for another 2, maybe 3 hours, even after the fire goes out. So that helps you. If you're away from home, that's a really big deal because your house is still warm after that time, and it starts up a fire again pretty easily when it's still that hot. There's still some burning embers laying in the bottom to get the fire going again. Now there is a plug right down in here that you can open up and drop your ashes down into to a drawer that's down below here. You can do that if you want. I don't bother using that. I just have a little scoop and I just scoop it into my ash pail and haul the ashes out. But it is a nice feature. It gives you a nice option. This particular one has a glass door. Sometimes it's nice just to sit here at night and watch the fire. Whenever you see the window of this get covered up with soot, the best way to clean that I found is to take, well, make sure this is cool, completely cool first, but then take a newspaper that's damp and it cleans right up. Nothing to it. So let me take you around and I'll show you a couple of the features outside of this too. All right, here's the stove I was just showing you a minute ago. There's the pipe for the chimney that goes out the sidewall, and you can kind of see I call it the firewall that I installed. And I'll do another video on that some other time too, because there's a lot to that that helps keep your house from burning down, which is kind of a concern of mine. I don't want that to happen. I have a hot water kettle down there. I'll put that up on top of the stove once in a while. If it gets a little dry in the wintertime, that boils water and shoots moisture into the air, helps keep the house a lot less dry in wintertime. Don't always need that, but I have it available if I need it. I have a ash bucket over here. I have all the appropriate tools over here. There's a ash scoop, little broom, there's a little poker there, and some tong type materials. Good idea to have some gloves so you can actually reach right into the fire with these things and you'll be just fine. You won't burn your hands off. I use them pretty much every time I put wood in the stove. Keeps your hands nice and safe. Watch my other video on how to make some kindling. There's where I keep my box of kindling. There's some extra newspaper to help light the kindling if need be. Down here is something interesting that you don't see all the time. These are little plates that you can set on the stove. So if you're cooking on the stove, when you got your cast iron skillet on there, it gets so hot on here, it burns right through to your food so fast that these here dissipate the heat a little bit with these little air vents, so your food won't burn in the bottom of your cast iron skillet. So they're pretty handy to have. I've got a cast iron skillet video I'll probably show you a little later too. Other than that, I've got a stack of wood here. Now the whole idea of having a fair amount of wood here, kindling here, is that as the fire is burning, it also kind of dries out your wood. If there's any moisture in your wood at all, it helps dry that out. I also made a few of the dryer lint fire starters. Probably do a video on how to make them too. Those things work really well. Usually don't have to use those very much at all because of the other kindling I have. Now the airflow in this thing is kind of important. My house is a little newer, a little bit more airtight, and so I have to have a means of getting fresh air to the fire so the fire burns easier, I guess. So I had to drill a hole in the back of my house, connect an air pipe so that I have fresh air going to the wood stove. It's actually very important. Before I put that in there, I tried burning the fire and the fire would hardly burn at all. So once I put that in, it burns beautifully. Down here is the damper. You can open it up. That opens up the airflow from that tube I just showed you in the back. Lets the air come up in into there. Well, it's really dirty. I'll have to get that clean. And then as it gets going really well, I can just close this down enough where it's burning at the rate that I want and get that set at the perfect spot. Usually I don't have to fill this stove more than once every 4 hours, maybe once every 5 hours, kind of depending on the type of wood I'm burning. But that's basically it for this stove. It's a really nice stove. There's a couple different brands in the market that are built kind of the same as far as the brick lining, insulation. They're super efficient. They cost more, but they're well worth the money. I've saved a lot of money in firewood by making this switch. It emits a lot nicer heat. It's hard to describe. The heat coming off of this is a much nicer feeling heat when you're standing around the stove compared to those old stoves that just burn like crazy. And this stove does come with an optional blower that you could attach. It's on the back bottom, and then the air comes up through these vents here and kind of blows out this way. Some homes that work pretty well, but because of the layout of my home, I don't really need a blower. And plus, if my focus is having some heat when the electricity goes out, that blower is useless anyway. So I didn't opt to put the blower on. It would help push the heat around quite a bit better, but it's just something I didn't need. So keep watching for the video. I'll probably be doing one on this fire wall I built in the back. There's a lot more to it than it looks. I'll show you all about that, and I'll also do a video on the chimney in the outside of the house.